Oh, good.
I ain't doing it. Give me a heart attack.
And we're on television, people kind of deploy themselves with dignity, if you don't mind. Oh, me. Millersville, City of Millersville Planning Commission called to order for our regular meeting on November the 13th, 2018 at 5 p.m. We're glad you're here, and we're going to have the invocations, and then we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand? Brother Gregory.
Heavenly Father God, we don't go to this day. God, ask for guidance, leadership on things that we do in the city and our departments and our department heads, Lord, and those committees when we meet. That would be mindful to look to you for guidance. Lord, we love you. We thank you for the foot of the cross, we pray. Be with those less fortunate, those who serve our nation, and the leaders of our nation. God, help us in all things. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank each of you for your participation. Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Chairman Frank Fox.
Present.
Vice Chairman Larry Petty.
Present.
Secretary David Gregory. Here. Keith Bell. Mr. Lee Smith.
Present.
Mrs. Deborah Wade.
Here.
Well, quorum, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Gregory. Item 5 is disclosure of ex parte communication. If any of you had any conversations with anybody about anything that's on the agenda tonight, you'd summarize it, we'd appreciate it.
I say no.
All right. Those of you who've had an opportunity to, I hope you've taken a minute to read the minutes of the previous meeting on October the 9th. And if you have, I'd like to entertain a motion that those, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting on October the 9th, 2018.
Mr. Gregory moved. Do I have a second?
A second.
Ms. Wade, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show the minutes were approved as read. Item number 7, public comments. Mr. Ackman, you got anything?
No.
Mr. Rainey, you got anything? Thank you very much.
I just say I don't want to sign it. Well, one other person signed it.
Okay. I guess you'll get to talk to me. Okay. All right, action items. Item number 8, A, plat amendment of lot 65 Deepwood Glen, section 3, Robbins County map 126P, parcel A, group A, parcel 37.00. Mr. Barr.
All right, Mr. Chairman, this is a tricky one, probably one of the more complicated issues that I'll bring to you, at least recently. In this case, just a little background, we had a builder property owner that back in 16 or 15 built a home that encroached in both the front and side setbacks in this subdivision. The builder in the city tried to remedy this at length. It took quite a while until finally the owner was able to get their ducks in a row and make a petition to the Board of Zoning Appeals to allow for variances to a number of different violations to, in particular, the recorded subdivision flats restrictions. The BZA voted down all 3 requests and then also affirmed the building department's denial to issue a certificate of occupancy. Consequently, this property has sat vacant since then. Earlier this year, it was sold to a new party. And this new party, Mr. Nash, has come up with, in cooperation with his surveyor who is here tonight, Mr. Bruce Rainey, has come up with a potential solution to remedy this. To refresh your memory, this house was built about 17 feet inside of the front setback and about 13 feet inside of the side setback. Because the plat, when it was in place and recorded back in the late 80s, determined its own setbacks for a myriad of reasons. Some of it was controlled by planned leach fields for septic systems. Some of it, I think, was probably relating to some of the topographical challenges of these lots. But in essence, every other property, to my knowledge, in this portion or section of the Deepwood Glen subdivision was built per the restrictions, in particular the setback restrictions, except for this last house. And in fact, this is the last house to be built in this portion of the subdivision, if not the entire subdivision. And to refresh your memory, the Deepwood Glen subdivisions are located adjacent to and are accessed through the Quailwood Estates, which some of you may know that subdivision up on Bethel Road, just about a quarter or half a mile east of the interchange. We have a city commissioner who lives in there. Our city manager used to live in there, Mr. Mobley, and in fact, Mr. Mobley had a house about 3 or 4 down from this one. There's been a lot of anguish over this issue over the years, a lot of finger pointing, but at the end of the day, it was found that the builder was in fault for how he constructed and where he constructed this home. So the plan of action on this, there are essentially, well, we thought there were just 2 options: to tear down the home, actually 3, tear down the home, move the home, or relocate the home. Honestly, I expected the home to be
What's the difference in move and relocate?
off-site.
Oh,
At one point, I think there was an offer to buy the home, and they were literally going to move it to another lot in the city. The previous owner explored options to move it on its existing lot, in other words, to modify the foundation and literally move the house to one side and to the rear to bring it into conformity with the setbacks. But that price point was evidently pretty steep. Although, as a side note, we have another builder in the city that built their actually 2 homes inside the setbacks. This builder literally moved one of the homes across the street to another lot, and subsequently chopped off a chunk of the other home that was in violation and reconfigured the footprint to bring it into conformity. You all may remember this. You all approved the replats of a number of those lots to make them larger to account for these larger houses that didn't fit in the footprints of the setbacks. Nevertheless, Mr. Rainey and the property owner are proposing to amend the recorded plat in only this lot to reduce the front and side setbacks. And in order to do that, there is a complicated process. The covenants and restrictions that were approved were recorded by the developer in 1986 and subsequently renewed or continued in 2006, allowed for a process to modify the plat. Typically, in my opinion, if you choose to modify a subdivision plat that already has homes built on it and whatnot, in most cases, it would require 100% of the property owners within that plat to agree to modify that plat. Now, in this case, the covenants and restrictions will allow for 2/3 majority of the property owners to consent or approve of modifying or amending the plat to change these setbacks. However, before that can happen, the covenants and restrictions have to be reinstated. In order to reinstate the covenants and restrictions, we believe it is, and I'm in agreement with the owner and Mr. Rainey, that as long as you have 51% of the property owners, that they can agree to extend it or to terminate them And I believe in this case, to reinstate them would be appropriate as long as 51% of the 25 property owners in section 3 of the Deep Glen subdivision consent to that. So that means my math says 13 property owners have to agree to reinstate the covenants and restrictions. Once the covenants and restrictions are reinstated, assuming they are, then there is a 2/3 majority required to amend the subdivision, either the covenants and restrictions or even the plat. The language is general enough that I believe that they can amend the plat if they have the 2/3 majority, which I think is 17 or 18 property owners have to agree to this. That being said, it's a complicated process, but also the planning commission has to agree to this plat amendment. Similar to any other subdivision plat that comes before you, here in the city requires the planning commission's approval. There are a couple of issues that I want to bring to your attention about this. The first is that both of these proposed setback modifications are less than our tightest lot restrictions. In other words, our R5 zoning, which is for your typical quarter acre, 10,000 square foot lot, has a minimum requirement of 25 feet for the front setback and 12 feet for the side setback. In some cases, that has been reduced by a plat with this board's approval. Secondly, so this is a requirement, and by the way, this is an R5 zoning up there, even though the lots are larger than 10,000 square feet. That zoning was assigned back in 1999 when the city adopted its official zoning map, and it has not been changed. So I want you to be aware of that the 23 feet on the front is less than the standard 25, and the 7 is less than the standard 12 feet. But there's nothing that prohibits this board from allowing the 23 and the 7, just so you know. Secondly, is that with 2/3 majority of the property owners in the subdivision being required to consent by writing, by notarized signature, by the way, there's no clear requirement that the property owners, either adjacent or across the street, have to be part of that 2/3. So, and in that case, and this is just one of my concerns, is that the folks that have to deal with this most and see it every day, either their neighbors next door or across the street, would be impacted into the street or who don't have to drive by it, may vote affirmatively and agree to it, but as long as they have the 2/3, then that meets the technical requirements to amend the plat from the owner's perspective and the subdivision perspective. So nevertheless, as I mentioned in my staff report, or put on there, I don't have a recommendation on this. This is going to be up to you. I haven't heard from any of the property owners up there about this, although I haven't been proactive and reached out to them, but that's not normally something that I do in a case like this. As far as I'm concerned, their notification is through the public notice of our hearing or our meeting agenda. Although some of the property owners up there are aware of this, I've talked to a couple of them. Like for instance, we have a gal that's on the BZA. She is aware of this. There's another property owner. Her name is Miss Lay. She is aware of it. Miss Christine Lamont, who lives next door, is aware of it. But nobody has come to me with an opinion either up or down. So I hope I've given you enough information. It's confusing, so I'm happy to either repeat myself or to answer any questions to help clarify this for you. But in essence, the property owner is asking the city to agree to reducing the front and side setbacks.
All right, it's in order then that we, thank you very much. It's in order then that we consider item 8A, And at this time, I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak?
No. Let me get a motion in a second, and we'll talk all night. Somebody make a motion.
I make a motion, we do not, we just leave the 21.
Now, you gonna do what?
I make a motion, that we leave it just like it's platted now.
Right now it's 40 and 20s.
That's my motion. I mean, you don't have to say.
Well, this is the plat amendment. What does the plat amendment do?
The plat amendment reduces the front to 23 and the side to 7.
Is that what you're saying?
Are you voting on the amendment?
I thought Mr. Fox wanted
I just wanna,
a motion so it can get on the table.
I want,
Can I make a motion, we put it on the table?
If you're making a motion.
you're making a motion that we approve the plat amendment for lot 65 of Glenwood.
Is that your motion?
You can amend it later now, but let's get a motion in a second. Or else it'll just die for lack of attention.
I'm just gonna let it, I don't want it, so I'm just gonna let it go at that for right now.
Okay. Then I'll make the motion to approve the amendment.
Okay.
That was you, Mr. Gregory?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gregory's moving that we amend the plat on lot 65 Deepwood Glen Section 3 as outlined in the Mr. Rainey's sketch or drawing. All right. Is there a second? Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Ms. Wade is second. Now, we've got a motion and a second. Let's have some discussion. Mr. Rainey, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, the property owner, Mr. Nash, I know he has been in contact. The first thing I told him was to contact your neighbors, talk to them. I know he has been in touch with them. He feels confident that the percentages required for each document he can obtain. I do understand Mr. Barr's concern, and I would personally have the same concern, that the most impacted need to be involved. And I would say, I'm sort of wearing a different hat here, but I would say you, planning commission, would have the right to impose a guideline or a restriction on your approval to require the two joint property owners to agree to this as part of the 2/3 and as part of the 51%. I think that, I'm not so worried about people across the road, they're across the road. One, but Mr. Bart is exactly right, the ones immediately adjacent. You know, I can see what that would really have an impact on them.
Is the house vacant?
Yes.
The house-
It's unoccupied,
It's
but it is complete, but it has not been certified for occupancy.
I've talked with my client about moving the house. Of course, we opted to try this route first.
Now, this is one of those lots, the back of it drops off like straight down.
All the houses on that road do that. I designed Deepwood Glen back in the 80s. I designed Quailwood back in the early 80s. I worked with the developers of this who bought it from Ted Jones. Knew Ted went. But anyway, yes, sir, this would have been in the back, all the three of these lots.
What does it look like when you drive by? Does it look like an Annie Godwin house sitting on?
It's catty corner.
Yes, sir. It looks,
Setting off, it's setting off.
I can't speak about the builder, original builder, don't have a clue about it. I don't know why they did what they did. Obviously, they made an error. But I would respectfully ask approval, possibly a conditional approval or that's the only thing I could come up with when I've been looking at it, and a reasonable response, so thereof. But I read restrictions, it took me about a month to figure out anything to do other than jack the house up and move. And this was the only thing I could come up with, been working with Michael for a month or two after I figured out what to do, going through the city attorney and through Michael's office. This is my best shot at it. If you will. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. We'll be glad to answer any questions, but, that's it.
It's good that we have restrictions, but I remember that lady that night was so disgusted. Just was brought up.
The night.
Huh?
The night of
Right.
his house, yeah.
Because he didn't have water running over in her. And she was just so frustrated. Mr. Mobley was frustrated. I don't know about the people, if you're looking at the house to the right, I'm talking about the lady to the left, if you're looking at the house.
That's Miss Lawrence.
I felt so sorry for that lady.
That's Ms. Who?
Lamont.
My mom. And that was my big concern, is just, we're gonna have to do something, because if she's unhappy and the lady next to her's unhappy, or the guy next to her, him's unhappy, I don't care if the guy lives 6 doors down is all for it, or 2/3 of the thing for it. I'm worried about the people that's right against it. That it impacts the most. You know, I'm sorry that the guy went up there and put all that money into it. I mean, he should have researched a little bit better than this. I'm gonna build a house, I don't care if it's sticking out in a road, if it's sticking on her property, I'm gonna build this house. And that's what he did.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give Mr. Rainey a little history. The original builder came in front of this committee, and I think we all that saw his wife in the back felt very sorry for her.
Yes.
This was a big debacle, and the man admitted, I saved the money and did not get certain when I did. So that's where the mistake started. As far as the restrictions and covenants, this house was built with no restrictions and covenants. When you built it, they were expired.
Actually, when he pulled the permit, for clarity, when he pulled the permit, the covenants and restrictions were still in place.
But those covenant and restrictions were really, they'd already been extended 10 years.
They had, yes,
Okay,
they expired in the 60s.
I would think that your city minimum setbacks would supersede any restrictions and covenants.
No, actually, the setbacks aren't addressed by the covenants and restrictions, they're addressed on the plat, of which the jurisdictional agency or municipality was, in my opinion, when they were a signature to that plat,
Well, that was
it
Robertson.
was Robertson, but when it was annexed into the city took that role as the jurisdictional agency. That plat, in my opinion, is a contract between the city, the developer, and then the subsequent lot owners with it.
I got all that.
Yeah, but the covenants and restrictions, we're not a party of, we didn't sign, we didn't approve, we didn't even look at them. That was a private arrangement among the developer and the buyers
But, you know, we've already turned it down,
one time.
and I think the board is on the appeals to go in front of them on.
They did.
Every time.
So, I feel bad for the builder, but I really feel bad for the guy that bought it from him, unless he bought it with a contingency of getting something approved. Because he had to know there's no occupancy permit for his house when he bought it. And I don't know what he bought it for. He may have stole the house. I don't know. None of that matters. You know, but he knew what he was buying. And we done disprove. We had to. And I can't see us backing up now and saying, oh, well, it was just a tragedy. You know, now this man's bought it. Maybe he sells it again and somebody else comes in front. You can't keep doing it.
And at some point, we're gonna need to draw a line in the sand.
Yes. And
And staff here at the city has been very patient, and the boards and our city commission has been very patient, and especially the neighbors have been very patient resolving this. But frankly, if we can't come to a positive decision tonight, then we'll need to take steps to abate the situation. And when I say that, I mean that the city may step in and either take action to correct it in whatever manner we need to. We have not done that before. I'm not looking forward to it. It will take a coordinated effort between the city, our attorney, and various department heads. Honestly, it's gonna be a mess, but if that's what we have to do because we can't find a way to solve this issue, I mean, that's about the only option on the table other than literally moving it, as Mr. Rainey mentioned.
Well, the survey would have been everything, very good.
Correct.
And
And that
he
was
admitted-
recommended
he
multiple
admitted-
times.
He admitted that, I say $400-500, whatever, it was $1,000, I don't know. So he took that on his, and this next buyer has took it on his, the way I see it. And I even brought it up to Michael, does anybody in the city, building inspector, codes enforcer, ever go look to see when they pour that footing, is it within? No. It's not their responsibility.
It's not the city's. We are not licensed surveyors.
I understand, I'm just saying, it's,
We can give an opinion,
no,
and at the time, the opinions were provided that it appears something is amiss.
no, I mean, that's not your job. You explained it. That's not what we do. The building, anybody that builds, surely to goodness, wants to build it on their property. Not ever make that mistake that you built it on somebody else's property or you got within the minimum setback. So,
Yeah, what concerns me is these two property owners on either side of the home, that we've already heard one. And I think that's the one that's 7 foot away on the property line.
but
And I'll be honest with you, I made this motion this evening to get it to discussion. I wanted to discuss it, we'd have voted it, we went straight to the vote, we never had discussion, so.
Well,
Yeah,
that's not the good thing to do.
yeah, we've done it in commission to get the motion on the table where we can discuss it.
and see, last I had understood that this man had made arrangements with a piece of land around it. Not the man you're representing, the building, to actually move the house. And I even drove up there a couple of times like, I wanna see it, I wanna see this being done, man. And, I can't, support this, I'm sorry, you've done a lot of work on it, and you represent your client. And, good mistake, and I made it too, everybody made it.
That's the biggest lot up there.
Well, like you said, there ain't much usefulness except
But it's not the deepest either. I mean, I hate it that anybody's gonna lose or have to put more money out for that first guy. It don't give it on, you know. He had mindset, I'm gonna do this, you know, and that was the end of the conversation.
I'm shocked he was able to say it.
Yeah.
You've been around the world a long time.
I'm shocked.
You've been in this man's world a long time.
I'm shocked he was able to sell it to somebody other than me.
Good discussion.
Sounds like something I've done.
Good discussion. Mr. Petty, you got anything else you want to say?
No, sir. I was just gonna say, I was gonna ask you, have y'all researched that how much it would cost to move it?
Owner has researched it,
Okay, all right,
yes.
okay. Yeah, just another question, that's all. I'll throw it on.
Okay, are you ready for questions? We have a motion to pass on the plat amendment, lot 65 Deepwood Glen, section 3. Is anybody in favor? All right. Is anybody opposed?
I'm talking.
I do too. Let the record show that amendment passed, failed by unanimous vote. Can I put words in your mouth? Okay.
I'm very sorry. So bad,
There's a lot of stuff.
Bad, it ain't your fault, is
no. I just hate it.
it? Too.
Nobody I just happy about it.
Not at all. Chairman, can I just put something out there?
No.
Mr.
I just
Chairman, may I?
We get down here to commission comment,
Well,
we'll let you talk. You're welcome, if you want to have a closing prayer, go ahead.
I'd like to remind the board that Mr. Rainey offered up a potential compromise that, I'm not sure if it registered clearly with you about the adjacent property owners, consenting directly as an option, but all I'm doing is reminding you of the, okay.
Yeah, I understood it too, but you know,
Okay,
I'll be honest, if they had 100%, I don't know, I'd even be any more agreement than I am. They had 100%.
thank you for indulging.
well, okay, that's enough. I got my opinions, but I'll just sit on it. Getting people to agree is kind of like catching cats, you know, you just
Can't hurt them up, can you?
can't hurt up a cat. And no disrespect to any citizen in Millersville, it's just a fact of life, honestly. But anyway, let's go on to the next item. Reconsideration of zoning designation assignment for 26-acre portion of Robinson County map 125, parcel 177 from R5 to R4. That's the sheet back here with the colors on it. Mr. Barlow, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a matter that was brought to the Planning Commission September 11th. And this was while the annexation process was in play with the City Commission. There was a recommendation from this board agreeing to the zoning of R5, which is your typical quarter-acre, 10,000 square foot lot. If it is developed as a subdivision, or maximum density, if there is another development plan that's proposed, whether it's multifamily, adjoining single, or apartments or whatnot, irrespective of that, the City Commission approved the first reading of the zoning designation ordinance to the R5. However, as some of you may know, there was tremendous public opposition to the R5 zoning. It is currently zoned Robertson County R30, which they have different designations than what the city has. The R30 for the county is a minimum 30,000 square foot lot. That equated to, I think, about 35 homes on this, or 35 units, whereas the R5 would have provided for as many as, I think, 110 or 115. To drop it back to the R4, which is the 20,000 square foot minimum lot, takes you down to, I think, 56 maximum units or homes on the property. The owner has agreed to roll that back considering the public opposition to it. I also might note that when the gentleman, Mr. Fuqua was here making his opposition known as kind of the community leader, if you will, of the 120 some that showed up at the commission hearing during the public comment, mentioned a term that it's a legal term called arbitrary and capricious. In other words, if you're pulling something out of thin air and there's not a nexus or a connectivity to, in this case, to the zoning, going from a 30,000 square foot lot to a 10,000 square foot lot could be considered arbitrary and capricious. Now, the owner recognizes this and is agreeable to the 20,000 square foot lot, which is a direct next step in zoning density to the 30,000, not in ours, but in elsewhere, including the county. The county has 20,000 square foot lot zoning. But I think that it would remove this concern of arbitrary and capricious zoning for this property to go to the R4, which should reduce a lot of the public opposition to this. And I'll remind you, there is no development plan at this point. The owners have very vaguely and generally discussed some development options out there, but nothing has been carried forward, nothing has been planned, there are no conceptual plans. There are just some vague discussions about potential options. And they're not all residential, by the way. I'm not at liberty to share what those others are, but it's not an impactful development plan at this point of what we've discussed. So if this board is amenable, I'd like you to recommend to the city commission to roll back the zoning density from the R5 to the R4, from the 10,000 square foot minimum to the 20,000 square foot minimum, and hopefully will satisfy a lot of folks out there, and but continue to be able to move this project forward. So, by the way, it has been annexed. The annexation is done, and even Mr. Fuqua recognized that the annexation probably doesn't have much chance of a challenge in court, but they were really pushing the zoning issue. And I think this gives the city adequate coverage to secure our zoning designation, and frankly reduce our exposure to litigation as well as the property owner.
What's the name of these two roads?
Bethel Road is the curvy road, that's side to side on the page, and then the road north to south is South Mount Pleasant.
What's the one?
And further up on the top of the page, that's Swift Road, not to be confused with South Swift Road, which is on the other side of the interstate.
What's those roads look like?
They're all county roads. Well, Bethel obviously is a state highway. That's mostly a 24-foot wide highway.
So we did not annex the road?
Typically not.
Is this the property behind Bethel Church?
Somewhat behind it, it's mostly behind Little Roosters or.
This is South Mount Pleasant on the east side, and this is Williams Road on the.
No, that's Howell Road.
I mean Howell Road.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
It's right there back
Yes.
at the store.
Yeah.
And what will that do, that road traffic?
That any kind of impacts on that road, the city would work cooperatively with the county because South Mount Pleasant is a county road. The general consensus is that it will remain a county road until there are lands on both sides that are in the city. Then the presumption is those segments of road that are bordered on both sides become the city's responsibility. As it stands right now, Public Works is already going out there and maintaining the western side of the shoulder of the road. Pardon?
Shoulder of which road?
South Mount Pleasant.
I was just asking the size of this road. If
South Mount Pleasant, I believe, is probably an 18-foot road right now,
Oh, well.
18 to 20-foot road.
I'm trying to get in my head, you get 52 homes back here.
Well, similarly to South Williams, that project, Bethel Farms,
I didn't agree with that. So
they have a requirement of widening South Williams Road, and in fact, putting a 3-lane intersection so that you have a single northbound, but you have a dual southbound for left and right-hand turns.
That's about the road.
That is at Bethel Road.
They're not going to 3-lane it all the way back.
No, it's not all the way back. It's just enough so that you can stack, I think, half a dozen cars without blocking the road. And that's a common practice. Our engineers recognize that that was acceptable based on the 53 units coming in. Similarly, if a project were to come forward on these lands, we would work out, a development agreement that would have similar conditions to improving sections of South Mount Pleasant, possibly even in cooperation with TDOT, making some modifications on Bethel Road, maybe even a signal at some point at Bethel and South Mount.
I'm not as concerned about that as I am the actual road.
I'm not following.
Well, that was my problem with South Beach Road. You know, let's say, like we were talking about the fire suppression, you know, on a good sunny day, we could get back there in 11 minutes. Okay? All right, well, let's just say there's a fire going. How can cars drive down that road just walk? How's the fire trucks gonna get down there? It's a very narrow road. South Williams Road is nothing much more than driving.
Correct, and accessing the South Williams Road will be widened to two 12-foot lanes to the first entrance of the subdivision.
But I don't
That was a
get the
requirement.
same thing here. I don't wanna get the same thing here.
Well, we haven't reached that point on the development
I
plan.
understand.
This is simply zoning
I
issues,
understand.
not a development plan, not a site plan, not a subdivision or anything.
It's
Yeah,
probably getting ready to go south, and they wanna get all this lined up, so they can't.
possibly.
Well, that might.
Okay. Can't
That's all
speak
I
to that.
Does Howell Road go all the way down to the property?
I believe it ends at that corner, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the city is only responsible for the first, I think, 500 feet of Howell Road, which I think takes it right about to the back of the church.
Right.
Which, by the way, is already zoned commercial road. And the property to the right of it is also commercial one.
Right.
But we do not maintain Howell Road past that, simply because our city limits don't extend on either side of the road.
That's still all county.
It is all county there.
What would the zoning be had this offer not been tendered and we annexed it? Would we annexed it as R4 or would we annexed it as
Actually,
R5?
we annexed it as R30, the county R30, which is 30,000 square foot lots. But we can't make that zoning work here in the city because we don't have an R30 designation. The closest we would be is either 20,000 square foot lots or 40,000 square foot lots. We don't have a 30,000. We don't have
What's
that matches.
40,000?
Pardon?
What is the zoning for 40,000 foot lot?
R3.
R3. And everything else around here is R30 is what I'm seeing.
There are a number of R3s, yes. But
Is there anything on the table really now? I mean,
we're requesting this board to change their recommendation to the city commission from R5 to R4.
I thought that we made recommendations when we had, I didn't think we made anticipatory in the recommendations.
You did, yes, yes. You made a zoning recommendation to the city commission.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, sir. Or had one reading of it. And you've had one reading of it, but the city commission can modify, yes, at R5. The city commission can modify that zoning ordinance to an R4 at the second reading, at the public hearing and second reading.
Is that what they did?
Not yet,
They have not yet.
not yet, that'll be the final reading.
So, why are we even voting?
Because you are the recommending body for zoning related issues.
Didn't work the first time.
Pardon?
Didn't work the first time.
It sure did.
They reduced it.
No, they have not.
It ain't been reduced yet.
The owner requested it, and at least two city commissioners off record recommended that we revisit the zoning and roll it back from a 5 to a 4.
And that, from the 5 to 4 is just to keep the, say, peace with the community.
That's part of it.
That's all that is for. That's just to keep the peace with the community up there, just try to stay in standings with them.
In part,
Yeah.
yes.
This not gonna, you know.
Okay.
You want motions now or not?
Well, yeah, I guess.
With all due respect, I need action one way or the other, up or down on this.
We're moving, yeah.
Okay, all right, because to follow our procedures in the state statutes in zonings, zoning designations, there has to be a recommendation from the planning commission either way. Now, honestly, the city commission doesn't have to follow your recommendation. You're just a guiding body at this point in this matter.
But it does help to see planning and zoning the way they vote when we decide.
Yes, sir.
It does help.
Okay, all right, item 8B, reconsideration of zoning designation assignment for 26-acre portion of Roberts County map 177 from R5 to R4. Do I hear a motion that we
I make a motion to
Rezone
go
it
from R5 and R4.
recommend that it be rezoned from R5 to R4?
I do.
Mr. Petty, thank you very much. Is there a second?
I'm saying.
All right, there's a motion. Now we have room for questions. Does anybody else have any other questions? Other than, are you ready for questions?
He certainly could.
Well, no. But you said something in the discussion a while ago that made me think that these people have backed off and there's no plan on the table now.
There hasn't been a plan on the table. Honestly, they were seeking maximum density under our code, under our zoning code. They were reaching for the brass ring. And instead they got the chrome one. Or would settle for the chrome one.
But in my years of planning and zoning, we never did anything in anticipation of the brass ring. We just, there it was.
It has to have a designation.
So it's got
it. Can't restart. I don't want to restart. The state statutes require when there's an annexation that there be a zone from the annexing body.
And we gave them that, right?
I did make a recommendation, yes, for R5, and it had tremendous pushback from the community. And the owner is willing to roll that back to an R4, and that's what I'm recommending.
An R5.
There's R2. There's no plans for developing this property for quite some time if it's ever done.
We gotta keep saying that.
They said that, we're not repeating what the owners said. But it's his comment, all I know is his comment.
all right, we're ready for question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right, let it show that we voted unanimously to change it from R5 to R4. Thank you very much. All right, item C, rezone a portion of 6225 Darby Road from R2 to R3. 6225 Darby Road from R2 to R3. Mr.
Actually, this isn't a portion, this is all of parcel 4.00. You have two maps that follow this. The blue highlighted section is that parcel 4.00. You'll see that it is surrounded by R3 with R1 behind it. The R1 parcels are very large parcels which have minimal development opportunity to them. But generally around this parcel you have R2, R3, and nearby you have R4.
This is
Currently,
this R1 part, is that part that goes off down in
it drops off, yes.
There you go, okay.
Yes. Currently it's zoned residential 2, which is for a minimum of 2.5 acre parcels. That was the original zoning from 1999 with the adoption of the official zoning map of the city. What the property owner is proposing, now the property owner not only owns the blue portion of, that's parcel 4, but they also own 4.01 and 4.06, which are the 2 parcels that are between this one and Darby Road. What they're looking to do, and currently there are 3 homes on these 3 parcels. They're looking to add a 4th home, but they have to reconfigure these lot lines in order to make it work to create a 4th lot. But they can't create that 4th lot without changing the zoning, because you can't plat lands that don't conform to the zoning standards, so they would have to have at least 2.5 acres. Well, they don't have 2.5 acres. What they do have is they can result in the R3, which is 40,000 square feet, which is just shy of an acre. And that you'll see in the second graphic, the black and white print. You can see where the houses are located. You can see the proposed dash lines of what they're looking to plat. But before they get into the platting, we have to get the zoning out of the way first, the rezoning out of the way. The very light dashed lines are the current lot lines. It's a little hard to follow, but actually Mr. Rainey, coincidentally, is the surveyor on this issue as well for the property owner. They'll need to create a shared access easement that will follow the existing driveways, even though the new proposed platted lots will have connectivity to Darby Road. It's not practical to connect directly with Darby Road because of the topography out there. So it's a bit complicated, but it's doable and it follows the minimum standards of our subdivision regulations. But before we get into the subdivision or the replat, we have to bring the zoning into conformity with the proposed lot sizes. So we need to go from 2.5 acres to just less than an acre, 40,000 square feet. I don't believe I don't think it would be irregular to change the zoning to R3, since many of the properties, actually properties on both sides are R3.
Is there a house already on that, 4.00, is there a house on that?
Currently, yes, but to reconfigure the lot lines, they'll create a new lot that's to the east of the 3 homes. And that actually drops off as well, so they'll be building closer to the road on that one. But the property owner who owns the 3 current lots with the 3 houses on it is looking to add a 4th house.
He owns 01, 4, and 06.
Yes, sir.
He's gonna put the house to where now maybe it says point.
Yes,
Like,
about where it says
joint
joint.
access.
Correct.
Yeah, but
It does indeed. And also, once we go to the platting, at that point, we'll need to establish the minimum setbacks. So I've recommended to the surveyor to understand that those setbacks that are to be set there, whether they align with the R3 or they want to reduce them reasonably, once it's set, it is unlikely to be eligible for a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals should they encounter conditions that are too steep to build on, or if it's too expensive to build on the hillside. They've set the rules with the replat. The subdivision controls, in my opinion, and Mr. Wheeler, our city attorney's opinion. The subdivision restrictions control the development. Because that is a willing contract between the city and the developer and the property owner. And to change it would require going back and amending the plat. Because There's been some misunderstanding in the past among, especially the BZA and the planning commission, that restrictions that are in place by the subdivision plat are eligible for variances. Well, the conditions in the building envelope should have been known before the plats were created and these new lots were created. So once you lock it in, you're locked in without going back through and replat. And it becomes very complicated to replat, especially if there are multiple owners.
I'm sure Mr. Rain will take care of that since he's the first one on that. He's been in business a long time.
Indeed, he has.
Okay, all right. Let's have a motion, please. Rezone item C, rezoning portion of 7625 Darby Road, map 118 parcel 4.00 from R2 to R3. Somebody make a motion.
Make a motion that we rezone it from R2 to R3. Is that right?
R2 to R3.
R2 to R3, yes.
All right, Ms. Wade made a motion to rezone 7625 Darby Road from R2 to R3. Thank you, Ms. Wade. Who can I see for a second? Ms. Betty, thank you, Ms. Betty. Are you ready for questions? Any other discussion? Thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Michelle, let it, let the record show it passed by unanimous vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute, you can't leave yet.
Okay. I will.
All right, would you take a moment and sign in for us?
If you got a minute.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, we'll skip 9 and go down to 10. Commissioner comments, I have a comment, and I want Mr. Rainey to talk to us about what we can think about in developing Long Drive.
Oh, that was
Wow.
unexpected.
Well,
You weren't ready for that.
Huh? Do you sleep on it at night? Do you think about it? Is there anything that we can do as a planning board that we can do to
I've had
spur that along?
a lot of interest in the property,
Uh-huh.
some that I felt was undesirable, and would not even entertain looking at. Our goal, in fact, I'm giving thought to, and Michael and I talked a little bit, I'm really not interested in selling it to Millersville or giving it to Millersville. I think there can be a better use for it, tax-wise. But I'm sort of at a loss. We've been looking for any kind of company or a couple of companies that would get enough revenue back there to get a grant to get the road done. That's our biggest hurdle. Now, we paid to get sewer back there. We, my partners, and I. White House Utility put a 12-inch or 16-inch water main in it. So that's there. Biggest thing we've got to do is get the road fixed, because nobody, unless you're in a dump truck, is gonna come down that road. I've thought about mini warehouses. I've thought about, putting in some type of warehouse office combo that, a small business could rent 25 by 50 with a big warehouse door, garage door on one side, and an office, have the shop inside there. I don't know what kind of market that is.
Kind of like Space Park.
Yes, sir. And we, you know, we're at a loss as to know what interest someone would have. We've got grand total about 200 acres. Little more, little less. We finally got in state compliance. That took a lot of work. We spent one whole summer, had a crew there, 10 men with shovels and 5-gallon buckets, cleaning out that creek from the old quarry to Madison Creek. Took all summer, but we got it in state compliance. We hauled all the ash, put it back into the quarry. That got us in state compliance, so, yeah, we've spent a lot of time and money up there. Where we've been harvesting rock and crushing it, I know y'all know that, for our own use. We're not selling it, we're not giving it away, we're putting it on our own properties. We set it all up thinking that, well, if I can get some users, we can start climbing that hill to the left, taking some of that rock, going and crush it or what have you, and get something going up that hill. Again, it's just a matter of finding somebody with an interest in coming in there. We have not found them. I've had realtors looking. I've had, realtors supposed to be checking, what Millersville could use, you know, who we could attract, to no avail at this point. The answer is, Mr. Chairman, yes, we do think that.
I know you do.
We've got, we've owned the darn thing since 1980, I think, thereabouts. And would really entertain something, but it needs to be, I would not have residential call. Will you sell it for residential? No, I will not sell it for residential. That's not, Millersville doesn't need residential. Y'all need commercial and industrial. Something to pay taxes. Lots of taxes. So that's a long answer to your short question.
Are we talking about the same side that Dad's record on right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's from the bridge back towards Dad's?
Well, yeah, we got from Dad's to the bridge,
Okay.
and then from Dad's all the way around to the, container thing y'all just put.
Oh, yeah. Containers.
No, we need Dad's. I hadn't heard about Dad's.
Yeah, you might have been off, but we approved the container.
No, not the container, Dad's.
Oh, he's a record.
Is he up there?
He's a,
On the left, yeah.
He just leasing.
there was a barge place.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He bought it, or
Yeah.
took it over and bought
Yeah.
it.
You see, he goes, you know what they do, but he got some campers and stuff that he retrieved off the interstate and owners never come and pick them up because they're,
I don't know about Dad's. He's a rock
After
and
that,
roll.
I've been flipped over 25 times, so they're not worth picking up. They just,
Rock and roll. Mr. Rainey, thank you very much for chatting with us, taking the time. Y'all
Yes, thank you.
indulge me a minute.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Back to item 9, Mr. Barr. You wanna warn us about what happens if we don't go to the training?
You get shot.
I went and they said I didn't, so.
You were there, I
I
thought.
apologize, Mr. Smith, more than once.
We seen you, I know you're there, you stand with the mayor.
Okay.
That's scheduled for the 26th at the Sumner County Government Center. Dinner will be served. I need a confirmation from y'all tonight that you, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then I think in the past, we've had a couple of the city commissioners come out for it as well. So I need a head count by tomorrow morning, but Mr. Smith, are you sure? Okay, all right. Good there. Good, you had 3 commissioners.
Oh, it's great.
At least, and yeah, and it'll be
Monday
engaging.
night, yeah.
Yes, Monday night, yes. Mr. Fox, can I count on you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And because the ramifications are that if you don't meet the state requirements, that the city commission could use that as grounds to dismiss you.
The boot.
So, the boot, but that.
The worst thing that ever happened. We're on television, I'm not supposed to say.
It's the meeting, never mind.
All right,
I should, well, I'll send out a notice in the agenda
Okay,
as
thanks.
soon as I have that, but I have the notice already, so.
You gonna be there?
Yes,
You're
sir.
gonna be in Florida.
No, I'm going.
oh, going to zoning appeals,
I'll be
something,
in Wisconsin, actually. I will be there Monday night.
you gonna talk about speed,
I sure can.
is there anything to talk about?
Not really.
Okay, all right, planning and zoning activity,
We're catching our breath finally around here. The projects that are in play right now here in the city are either in design or in review, but they're all moving forward positively, which is very encouraging. We have a couple of small multifamily and commercial projects that are keying up right now that you'll be seeing hopefully in the next few months. Right now, we're taking this quiet time to do some housekeeping on our ordinances, including the zoning chapter, as well as working with Public Works on the sewer chapter. And we're also gonna take a look at a couple of other issues out there that we've been kicking those cans down the road, but we have some time now to get to them. Also, our electronic zoning map is nearly complete. There's some cleanup and some corrections to be made on it, but we will finally have an electronic zoning map that we'll be able to put on our website that the general public can get to and to see their respective zonings for their properties or others out there for that matter. That is about it right now regarding planning and zoning. There's other issues and whatnot going on right now. But, by the way, the sidewalk project is moving forward. We were recently awarded $837,000. That's an 80-20 match. We have an application in play right now that we have been shortlisted for a $1 million. That is a 95.5% match, which is exciting. If we get that, we'll save about $160,000 on our required match. And then we have another $1.3 million grant that's been applied for that hopefully we'll hear something come springtime on. And if we're able to put all three together, looks like we're gonna rock and roll on the project, get sidewalks on both sides of Louisville from City Hall all the way down to the Library and Community Center. And there may even be some additional funds left over to extend it a bit further. So we're really excited about that. We're looking at maybe some ornamental lighting, some sitting areas along the sidewalk, some rest areas for folks with maybe a park bench and a garbage can kind of thing, just to facilitate the walkability of our downtown core. So I'm very, very pleased to summarize that for you. The lights at the interchange, they will be bid in February, and hopefully those big tower lights up there and the lights on the ramps will be done by summertime. And that will be fantastic. That exit 104 will not be a black hole any longer. The old Shiloh Bridge they wrapped up the design on that replacement, T-Dot's running that project. That is entering the right-of-way acquisition. Turns out they have to buy some land on either side of Old Shiloh and the bridge so that they can build a conventional bridge across the Mansford there. But they need some extra land for the road and the shoulders and guardrails and the stormwater drainage and whatnot. That's expected to be bid out in November of next year, hopefully completed by the summer of 2020.
Who owns the bridge when we get done? Who owns the bridge?
The city will.
All right, this city.
The city has agreed to maintain the bridge, including the portion in Davidson County. That was really one of the issues that stretched this out, as well as some funding challenges that Davidson County presented us on that. But that's moving, albeit slowly, but it's moving positively. And frankly, we only have about $7,000 or $10,000 into it. So the taxpayers of Millersville, while being patient, are saving a ton of money. And so it's a trade-off. We either spend the money up front or we wait and the state helps fund most of it. So
Since you're talking about grants, so that money could also pay the two bridges,
is it doing what?
painting the two bridges.
Painting the bridges. I'm not sure which bridge you're referring to.
Well, they're culverts really, one down here, the one down in front of the, community center.
I don't know about painting them.
We discussed it back a few years ago, I think before you was here,
That's news to me.
and we discussed it, and, Mobley was the city manager at the time, and it didn't go nowhere.
Painting them how?
Well, the state allows you to paint either white or gray,
Oh,
and
we
we
have
had a
like
guy,
rails and
the bridge itself,
We talking about the steel and.
Like underneath
and
the
I'm talking about
interstate,
the bridge, concrete.
like underneath the interstate.
Painting the concrete?
Yeah,
The,
we had a citizen here that was going to pay to do both of them.
that's news to me.
Well, I know it is, I just wanted, since we was talking about the
it's
grant.
in the maintenance there.
No, it's no maintenance, it's, but it was stopped because the state said it would flake into the creek. And I said, well, how do they paint the bridges in the state that goes over rivers and creeks? They paint them the same way, either white or gray or green. But they told us we could paint it either white or gray.
I can look into that for you.
If you don't mind, we have
No,
time.
not at all.
Because we're gonna make this section of our city as pretty as we can, we're not gonna do that, consider that as an option. Because we was gonna put benches on both sides of those bridges, since we changed from 5 to 12 foot on this side. We took that out, but we was gonna put benches for people walking across the bridge once we had to do sidewalks.
And we're still pursuing that.
Thank you, appreciate that.
And chances are, depending upon the monies that we have awarded, we'll either have bridges on either side of the highway at each of those two, so there may be as many as 4 new bridges. These are just pedestrian bridges and not vehicle bridges. Or there's a possibility, if funding isn't adequate, of just 2 bridges and then building a sidewalk on one side of the existing highway bridge to allow, the 5-foot path along there. Probably have some realignment of the roadway, reduce the lanes or something, but it all really comes down to what total dollars we have available to us.
Will we have to move telephone poles?
Probably not.
Because they're gonna ride there on the line, property.
We believe they are, yes, so that's still to be determined once we get into design. We haven't gone there. Yes, yes.
Okay. Any, Mr. Pettit?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. No, sir. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Wait,
Public comment.
Public comment, I'm sorry, go ahead,
Hey,
Mr. Public comment.
Hunter Nash, good to see you. Michael's good to meet you, sir.
Hunter Nash.
Hunter Nash, yeah, William Nash is my dad. He invested in Millersville about June of this year. And it's this, Action 8, Plat A Amendment, Lot 65. And I personally walked door to door, and I've talked to both sides of neighbors, Mayfields, Arnold, and the Lamonts, and spoken to everybody. They don't want disruption. They don't want another 4 months of construction. It's the last house in that neighborhood. And I could personally get signatures of everyone to get this passed and get this moving.
Mr. Nash, unfortunately, this board already voted that down. Mr. Rainey was here, he made a presentation, I made a lengthy summary of how we got here, we discussed options. This board,
What was the reason?
well, actually, like the commissioners, they can explain their votes better than I can, but they did consider
This is
the
already been
option.
addressed with previous owner.
Yeah, this is a new owner,
And I know you're a new owner. Were you aware of it?
the new neighbors
Or
are,
were you aware of this when you bought that?
I was aware that we could at least talk to the neighbors, and the problem is there's no
That was not
HOA.
there. That was not there. That was not there. When the builder came here in front of us, he said, I screwed up. I didn't get a survey when I built it. He said, I made a mistake. And wanted us to forget. We did.
The neighbors didn't forget?
We did.
The Board of Zoning Appeals denied the request for variances.
And I asked
for the
Mr.
setback.
Rainey if you were aware of this when you bought the house.
Yeah, everybody's aware that it was set up, slightly forward to the left,
A lot forward into the left.
according to the HOA that's not even
It's
existing.
not an HOA.
I know, so it's not a Millersville zone either, though.
Yes, it is.
It is with the adoption of the plat, it became a Millersville, restriction on that subdivision. When the plat was approved in 1986, that created the setbacks,
Gotcha.
which actually supersede the city's setbacks, so those.
The neighbors
setbacks
were
are-
excited to get this re-signed to have it after HOA.
And
I've talked
also,
to everyone.
I was
You
at the
know what
first
HOA
meeting.
is?
Yes,
Where
sir.
you pay homeowners association?
They don't pay, it's a loosely, you don't have to pay for HOA.
I thought you were wanting to re-modify the restrictions and covenants.
There's no money involved.
Well, the covenant, just for clarity, the covenants and restrictions, to reinstate those, does not create a homeowners association. It simply creates an internal restriction. It's an agreement of the common property owners, but the city is not a party to the covenants and restrictions. We don't enforce them.
Right.
We have no position, no opinion, and the only thing that we care about is what is on that plat, because the jurisdictional agency is a signer to that plat, which creates those restrictions by contract between the municipality and the developer of the property owners. So, but
If I brought it back to the
I'm
board,
gonna be honest with you, Mr. Nash. We didn't wanna do with the builder. We all felt bad,
at the past, too, I felt bad for it too,
and I feel bad for you for that.
because they don't want
That's
this all
got nothing-
torn up, the citizens there don't want construction
That's
noise.
got nothing to do with our decisions.
Well, it had something to do with mine, because the first time, that lady that lived next door,
Yeah.
she was here, she was totally against it, she hated it.
Yeah.
It upset her so bad.
It's,
Our ex-city manager, he lived right down the street from her, he was against it. There was about 4 people sitting right there, because I was on the board still then.
Yep.
And they're all against it.
I know,
So that's when we voted no that time. And if you'd have come in here on time with this lady's yes, no, whatever in writing, it might have been something different.
so I can still do that.
Well,
no,
not now.
the decision's been made.
The lady said, now they're gonna have to do construction and things going on.
We're sorry about it. I mean, it's a bad business. Very bad.
Yeah, we've heard so many things about this place in the last 3 years.
We're gonna have to continue talking about it, that's the thing, for the next couple of years.
No, no. I've been directed by the city commission and my city manager, that the city needs to take action one way or the other. And if that requires the city to come in and condemn it and abate it, and then lien the property, that is the worst case scenario if you're not able to remedy it by relocating the house to bring it into conformity.
Did you not buy this house on contingent of getting this done?
I bought it, to have it where the neighbors are happy with no more construction and leave it where it is.
You'd have come here before us, before you bought the house, and give us some information of what brought to us tonight.
But
I can understand it a little better, but I'm going back to what it was.
Yeah,
when
that's
they
why,
came
that's why I
before us
wanted to
the
bring the
first time.
signatures, I was under.
And that's what I'm thinking of.
Mr.
And
Nash,
I'm not thinking of anything else right now, because I didn't have the
I don't know
information.
who told you. Somebody seemed to have misled you that you could come to this board with signatures of proof of this back. I don't know who told you.
Well, the Robertson County is looking forward to a deed amendment, or excuse me, a plat amendment, if it was gonna happen. It was up to you guys to let it move forward.
But you bought it from the builder, correct?
Yes,
You didn't have a contingency on it. You didn't ask why he couldn't occupy that
Yeah,
night.
he had got, everything was passed through, guys, except for occupancy.
No, the.
Inspections were all passed.
The,
except
the
for occupancy.
structure itself, yes,
Safety
but-
and health was
but-
passed.
but the
water.
building was placed illegally or unlawfully. And so that's what has to be remedied, and that's what came before tonight, as well as the BZA last year for variances that the Board of Zoning Appeals voted down, and also, at that meeting affirmed the denial of the certificate of occupancy by the building inspector. Tonight, we looked at the option of the plat amendment to assuming you were able to get the signatures for the reinstatement of the covenants and restrictions, then get the 2/3 signatures for the plat amendment per the CNRs. But ultimately, the planning commission has to be a party to the plat amendment, just like the planning commission was a party to the original subdivision plat in 1986. That being said, it was at the discretion of this board to approve it or deny it, and it was by unanimous decision to deny your application for the plat amendment. So irrespective of how many, even if, and the comment was made that even if you had 100% of the property owners agree to it, they still would not have approved it. And I believe that's probably, and I may be speaking out of turn, but my assumption was that they denied it because it doesn't even meet our minimum setbacks in our tightest subdivision zoning, which is 25 feet on the front and 12 feet on the sides. So by reducing it to 23 and 7, I believe this board felt that that was just too small of a setback, a minimum setback, as you proposed. As I shared with you and Mr. Rainey, I didn't know which way this board was gonna go. And in fact, I did not make a recommendation either way. I just presented the information, the detail of how you were proposing to go about it, which I have to admire Mr. Rainey, it was creative. And it probably would have stood a challenge if a neighbor decided to sue over it, but ultimately it's the discretion of this board to approve or deny plat-related and subdivision-related issues here.
Once we get everybody on board, that's all right. Okay,
Very sorry.
Sorry, sir.
Sorry, sir.
It's,
hard to invest in Millersville.
no, it's got nothing to do with it. You gotta be careful.
How long do I got to move it back?
Let me reach out to you.
Yeah.
I'll talk to our city manager, and she's out this week, and then I'm out next week. So let me reach out to you either in 2 weeks or the first week of December, if you're okay with that.
That's fine.
Okay, all right.
I need to let all the neighbors know we're gonna make a lot of noise.
All right, this is, we have no more public comments, so, and we've all, don't want to say anything else, so I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yes, ma'am.
I hate to say you,
It's right. You guys are rolling dice. I don't know how long we've been rolling.